Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders to help it grow. Lance Sexton's in the house. Lance, good to see you. A lot of stuff on the agenda. I understand your webinar went well. We're going to talk about that on PPP. Let's just jump to that. Let's go to that right away. We do have some interesting fraud stories. Let's jump right to these questions. Lance, question from Hannah. What do we do in case of the original PPP borrower is selling the company?
Well, if the loan has not been forgiven, they're going to have to escrow an amount equal to the PPP loan from the sales proceeds. And that can be released once the loan is either forgiven or paid off.
These loans are not assumable, correct?
No.
Yeah. And this is from your webinar on Wednesday. Give a little context. What were we talking about, or what were you talking about?
Well, PPP forgiveness is ever evolving. I was telling both of you when I came on the air, there's a situation now that I'm trying to figure out what happens when a PPP borrower does not apply for forgiveness. You send them a couple of statements, you send them a demand letter, and you submit for guaranteed purchase. And SBA does the great job they do and process it and pays you. And then a week or two later, the borrower sends you a forgiveness application. Technically, in the PPP IFR, SBA indicates that they can apply for forgiveness all the way up to the maturity date, which means they should be able to. But I'm sitting here, you can't manually input the forgiveness application because once it goes through the guaranteed purchase process and is charged off, it disappears in the forgiveness portal. So I launched the question to the SBA. SBA came back and said, we realize that this is a problem that's going to come up and that they are working on a solution, but do not have it at this point.
But the answer is they are able to get forgiveness after the loan's been charged off.
According to all the IFRs related to PPP,
Right.
even if it's submitted for guaranteed purchase, it's just like somebody who files bankruptcy. If they file bankruptcy, they can still file for forgiveness.
Chris says, any advice on loans that are a pending validation for a long time? We have loans that's July of 21. That's a long time.
I would gather up a list of those loans that are pending validation. There are so many different reasons one might get hung up. As we all know, when a loan goes through the direct portal, typically the approval and the payment of the forgiveness is, in 3 or 4 days at the most. But there are some that get hung up. There are reasons for that. Again, there's so many, we'd have to have a multi-hour show, Bob, to talk about it. But what I'm going to recommend is you get a list of any that you're concerned about. But get a list, send it to PPP Forgiveness Request at SBA.gov. And they're doing a pretty good job. My good friend Jim Walters and I, who work together, shot an email up to PPP Forgiveness Request, and we got a response within about 10 minutes. So they're doing a good job of responding.
Good job, guys. Anna says, we recently learned that we had made a PPP loan to a fraudulent applicant. The person's identity was stolen. He called us to resolve it. What can we do?
Well, the question is, can they apply for forgiveness? Well, really the first steps are to encourage the person whose identity was stolen to go to SBA's Inspector General. And there is an email address, and let me share this on identity theft. And Bob, I apologize, I'm going to go to a document while I'm on the show. That's why I'm looking away. And I want to share this. I want to share this email address if it will ever, there we go. It is for identity theft. It is PPP ID theft inquiries at SBA.gov. So identity theft, PPP ID theft inquiries at SBA.gov.
Inquiry, IES, it's plural, not singular.
Well, and I think both the borrower needs to file a report with the SBA Inspector General. the participant lender needs to shoot an email, this PPP loan number, whatever, and borrower name is a possible ID theft or fraudulent PPP loan. I'm not going, if it's ID theft and the person did not receive the loan, they should not apply for forgiveness.
Okay.
So what are they going to be? I don't know what they can be forgiven from if they did not receive the money and use it in their business.
Lance, what document are you reading from? And Joseph, can we put that up on the dashboard?
That was the final slide, Joe, in Wednesday's webinar.
Can you put that up on the dashboard, Joseph?
Yeah, I'm adding it right now.
It has 30 email addresses that you for specific requirements, correct, Lance?
Yeah, it's just got some email addresses that lenders can use in servicing your PPP portfolio. And Bob, the one thing I'll tell you, and I was talking to Chris yesterday, Chris Hearn, my boss, and I was just, Chris and I talking, I was just sharing. Never in my wildest dreams did I think there would be so many scenarios in PPP servicing that came up that I didn't have the answer to. And that's why I wanted to do that webinar. And I was talking to you guys, and I think we need to do it again because every day something new comes up.
Something new comes up. Yeah, I want to talk about across the pond, fascinating story where UK banks are pushing back against the government. And there was a peer in the House of Lords, Lord Agnew, who resigned because, I love this quote, he accused the Treasury of woeful oversight and schoolboy errors. I love the British, how they say stuff. and what he's saying is that there are up to $5 billion worth of fraud. Now, the bankers are pushing back. One bank had a pretty good quote. They said that, I am beyond words. People were working every hour God sent us to find solutions. Hopefully common sense will prevail, but if it doesn't, I've literally told the Treasury and Financial Conduct Authority in meetings, I hope nobody has a short memory because I documented every meeting, recorded everything, that when they said, let's get these out, let's cut corners to protect myself, which is interesting. What I find fascinating, though, on this is that he demanded, this Lord, demanded the government stop paying out until the guarantees until there was clarity on what lenders were doing to tackle fraud. That means you don't have a guarantee program, Lance.
Well, I mean, it's just like PPP. Of course, SBA and our government are doing a good job. The PPP loan program did put a lot of language that says the lenders can rely on the borrower's certification, but we have to do everything we can to help vet out the fraud that's in the PPP loan program. But I've not seen SBA walk away from supporting participant banks. No.
But they had, again, you have to keep this in mind, 2% of the scheme, they call these schemes, have defaulted. And there's more. The problem is what Lance is, and all of you now are experiencing, wrapping up these loans. And these were loans, they were not grants, and they had no interest for the first 12 months, and now they're trying to collect. It was self-certified. There were no required credit checks. It was successful in that it got the cash out quickly, which was the purpose of the United States COVID programs. So and it was limited to 50,000 pounds. So it was a small loan program. Go ahead, Lance.
Well, one thing, Bob, that I think we're all going to find out as we work through the tail end of servicing is fraud is probably going to be more, I guess, on the front page as we work through the final loans, because the non-fraudulent loans have all, I'm not saying what's left is all fraudulent. I'm just saying, you started out with a giant pool, and 75, 80% of those people have applied for forgiveness. What you have left is probably going to have a few more problems and a few more examples of fraud.
But what I find fascinating on this is the bankers are banding together and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, don't throw this on us." It's very similar to that article I commented on last week where some, I'll say, idiots said only 25% of the PPP funds went to employees. Well, they had fuzzy math in that any sole proprietor or any partner, those were all excluded. And so if you had a sole proprietorship, those went all in the owner's pocket, the implication being that it did not go to employees. And so the stats were clearly false. But everyone picked that up and ran with that.
Well, Delaney and I have conversations about PPP fraud, and you can take the statistical information, Bob, and manipulate it however you want it to look. But
that's not true. The money went to employees, not 25%. That is just blatantly false. And yes, there is fraud and there's a percentage, but again, the percentages are
very low.
Yeah, within what you expect. And the government's doing a great job going after these people. Speaking of that, Olympic bronze medalist Allison Baver was a little. She got $10 million, and she said her monthly payroll was $4 million with 400 employees. The problem, Lance, that she used that money to do a film. The problem was she had no employees, none.
Ooh.
This
So
is a no-brainer. Oh, and she's pled not guilty.
yeah, forgiveness is pretty hard to submit for if you've got a $4 million PPP loan and no employees.
Yeah. And this is out of Utah. I guess it's getting a lot of publicity in Utah because of the obviously local and Olympic bronze medalist saying we follow celebrity worship. Oh, this person's a celebrity, so therefore they must have a different standard than the rest of us. We're going to be doing our secondary market summit next week. Little background, if you would, please. Do you sell your loans to the secondary market?
Well, it certainly is a great way to produce some non-interest income for your institution.
But some institutions choose to keep it on their books so for a longer term. So yeah, I was going to say 52%. So a little over half. That's in line with what my understanding is what the industry is. Thank you very much for that.
Well, Bob,
go ahead.
I can fall on both sides. I had at one of the financial institutions I worked at, we had a return on equity model that you could plug in and compare and contrast selling one on the secondary market versus keeping it in the portfolio, and they both do great things for financial institutions. So, for those who sell, good for you, and those that keep it in your portfolio, great for you as well.
It's simply the model you want. If you sell it, you can choose to get that cash injection in your P&L, or you hold it long term and reap the profits over a period of time. So now, but not everyone who sells 100%. So what percentage of your loans do you sell? And that should be over 50%. So 10% are under and over 50%. There you go. Lance,
wow.
There's been this discussion in the past, I'm going to raise it. If you sell to the secondary market, is that a negative impact on your Paris score? Tell me about that.
It does develop a red flag if you sell more. I think it's 70 or 75% of your loans on the secondary market, but it's one that can easily be explained. But it does have an impact on, it's one of those red flag items in your lender portal and your Paris score. So, if you're selling 100%, when you get reviewed by SBA, there'll probably be some discussion about that.
Yeah, my understanding is, and now this is several years ago, may have been updated, was there is a line item on the worksheet that says, do you sell more? And if it's yes, that's a red flag, but it does not impact the score. Is that still where we're at?
Yeah, that's true, Bob. There's not an item in the Paris score on the number of loans you sell in the secondary market, but it is, another example of one is, if you have very high growth, which you would expect SBA would want you to have very high growth, but if your growth rate, say, is 50 or 60%, that's also a red flag. Doesn't meet a negative, and it doesn't impact your Paris score, but it is an item that they will discuss
Red
with you.
flag simply means stop and assess. Now,
Yeah.
do you, now let's go ahead. I've lost it. Let's talk about the webinar. Let's start at the end. Lance, we sell these loans to the secondary market and we have to service them. What are you going to be talking about to our participants?
Well, we are going to just discuss here, when you sell a loan in the secondary market, you're still the lender. You are still the servicer, and you have to service those loans as prudently as you would any other loans in your commercial portfolio. So we're going to talk about some of the things that you need to take into account with servicing a loan that is sold in the secondary market.
We have a cool lineup. We do have SBA staff. John Wade is gracious enough to come back again this year, and I think some of this other staff will join us. John, a shout out to you. Thank you very much for doing this every year and talking to the lenders about this. The big topic, of course, is the change in the transfer agent. You will be able to ask him questions, so we will have that. Bob Judgeton will talk about his outlook for 2022, what he believes will happen to premiums. Our friend John Riossi is going to be talking about macro SBA issues. We'll throw in a little BNI, and then Lance will follow up with that. Very good. Joseph, do we have any more questions?
We're clear, gentlemen.
Hey, thank you all for joining us. I respect your time. We like to start on time and end on time. And with the new format, 20, 25 minutes. We'll stop a little bit early today. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great weekend.